When someone mentions knitting or crochet, you probably wouldn't think about math. The truth is, math is woven all throughout knitting and crochet. Of course there's the obvious counting and addition, but there's also subtraction, multiplication, division, measurements, and much more. So some pretty easy stuff, right? Well, not always. Before we get into the fun stuff, let's start with the simple math. In crochet, basic math comes into play while creating anything. Counting stitches and rows, adding in an increase or two, decreasing some stitches here and there, measuring your piece, blah blah blah. All simple stuff we learned in elementary school. Though it seems boring and simple, these concepts can make or break your crocheted piece. If you miscount your stitches, it'll look wonky. Add too many, it'll be uneven. Decrease too many and your piece will scrunch up. Too many or too little rows and you'll mess up the length or shape of the piece. Though it all seems simple and unimportant, if you make a mistake your finished piece will look bad. Now, onto the fun stuff. Hyperbolic geometry. Most of you have probably never heard of it or even seen a model of it in a math class. Well, mathematicians can only model this in crocheting. It's nearly impossible to model it on computers, and it's impossible to model it in stone or even on paper in a way for people to understand. Hyperbolic geometry is a geometry that most people haven't heard of, unless they have an interest in or work in math and science. Take a look at this image. This is hyperbolic geometry. It was crocheted as a physical model of the hyperbolic plane. Mathematicians had thought that this structure was impossible to model until a mathematician by the name of Dr. Dinah Taimina had actually modeled it, both by knitting and crochet. Mathematicians had thought, for hundreds of years, that this was impossible to model and anything that resembled the model was impossible to exist. Mathematicians even spent hundreds of years trying to prove that the hyperbolic structure didn't exist. Does the structure of this image remind you of anything you would see in the world? Well, if you said no, then you need to open your eyes. Not only does this structure resemble coral, but also the feet of sea slugs and even lettuce leaves. This entire model was created just by crochet. If a mathematician can crochet an entire plane of existence, that many mathematicians believed was impossible, then nothing is as impossible as it seems.